thank you so much for coming back on. And I have to tell this story because I want everyone to know how kind you actually are.
We got to do this
No, I'm not doing that anymore. Auntie Vice came on and did this interview with us already once, and my dumb ass forgot to hit the record button. And Auntie Vice you were so nice about it. You were like, no problem. So thank you.
I think when you're in podcasting, you live in fear of doing that, and we've all done it at least once.
I did first thing Hillary says to me is it recording? Did you hit the record? Yes, I did.
Okay,
make sure.
It's the first thing I heard. It's a recording in progress. Well, okay, then we're good this time.
It shows that Matt can learn. Well, listen, Auntie Vice, thank you so much for doing this. I don't really need to give you an introduction because, like I said before, unless you're living under a rock, you know who Auntie Vice is. But please, Auntie Vice, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
So I'm Auntie Vice. I do things. Mostly I'm a writer, and I write about kink. I run the blog Love Letters to a Unicorn. I'm also a podcaster. I do Fat Chicks on Top, which is lots of fat and kinky people talking about things. And I teach in the kink world, and I do stand-up comedy, all sorts of fun stuff. So yeah, I didn't intend to end up here. I went to graduate school for my doctorate in political psychology. And after doing that, I taught for a while, and then I came to California. I worked for the state as a nonpartisan policy researcher. People who know me by my government name, which is Rebecca Blanton, know my publishing around women veterans and the work that I've done there. And then apparently, after so many years in politics and as the head of a state agency, my body decided I couldn't take this much shit anymore and shut down. And so then I had to refocus, and I became disabled. I couldn't work a full-time gig, but I wanted to keep contributing. So I took that academic background, that writing background, and then refocused in kink because it's not that much different than my goals with my political work, which was to build more bodily autonomy for people, to promote a culture of consent, to help people live their best lives, and realizing that means we all look a little different, and the more out we can be and the more visible we all are with our differences, the happier we're all going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah. So you've written a lot of books. When you say you're a writer, you have written a ton of them. And you were telling us a story last time about a sci-fi story, right?
Your favorite publication.
Your favorite publication. I don't want the viewers to miss, or the listeners to miss that one.
So I love creating weird stuff. I had never written a fiction story before the age of 40. I was always a nonfiction writer, very academic, jargon heavy, blah, blah, blah. Things are serious. And I started writing fiction around erotica and found I had a knack for it. So then I started picking up the weird stuff, the sci-fi, the shapeshifter type of stuff, because they're worlds you can create whatever you want in those rules. You make your rules. And I liked that. And so I got hired to do a lactation porn thing, which not my thing, but there's plenty of people who like lactation and breast milk and stuff. There's plenty of people who like giantess porn. And so I just had fun with it. So I created this whole thing about this woman who works for basically a Genentech, a biotech firm in cancer research. They discover this drug that cures breast cancer, but the side effect is you lactate and anything that drinks the milk shrinks. So she starts capturing and shrinking her research assistants and her interns. And I mean, that's the part of me that's been in academia and understands the abuse you go through on that end. And then like making them live in these little doll houses with electrified fencing around them and stuff. And then we'll take them out and make them play Coliseum with a cat, where the cat gets to hunt all these shrunken interns and stuff. And it's just weird and over the top and gory. And oh my God, I love it. Like, she makes them do weird things. This is so not in the consent world. This is not what you should do in real life. But oh my God, it's so much fun to create a world where these bizarre things can happen.
That would be awesome.
So I think most of us have heard, your podcast, The Fat Chicks on Top. So how did this really come about? I mean, how did you decide that you were going to start this?
So I had been doing stand-up. I started doing stand-up comedy because I needed immediate feedback. And when you've been, an academic and a policy researcher for years, you have one relationship to language that is not anybody else's on the planet fucking relationship to language. And stand-up comedy gives you immediate feedback to how people respond to words and phrasings and topics. And so I'm doing this, and people know kind of what I do for my day job when I'm doing stand-up, and everybody can say, yeah, you've got something to say. We love listening to you. You should have a conversation. And a friend who came to me said, yeah, we should start one just us talking. And I'm not capable of doing anything low key. So then, of course, I come up with this complete structure, and let's get this person on and this person on, and this is how we'll put it together. And so we tried doing it live for a while. Physically, I couldn't maintain a monthly show live. It actually takes quite a bit out of me. So I started, then it just became an excuse to find cool people and ask them to talk for an hour. And it's like people I normally wouldn't have a chance to sit down to and just talk for a while. I'm like, hey, so I've had people like Rain DeGray on. She and I are never going to be at a place where we have an entire hour devoted to a chat between the two of us. But on podcasting, you can, which is the best reason to do it.
I agree. It is so awesome. I mean, we're sitting here with you right now.
Right?
I mean, it is just amazing to be able to do this.
What are some of your most memorable interviews from this?
I've met so many really cool people in the community. I just finished one that's coming out on Monday. I interviewed Azad. He is a kink educator, former journalist, lives in Milan, grew up in Italy, in his late 50s, early 60s. And we talked politics and kink and the intersection of homosexuality and communism in Italy, and just was absolutely fascinating. A world that I hadn't been exposed to. I know a little tiny bit about Italian politics, but stuff like that. I had an interview with Raheem Fowler a couple weeks ago, who is a gay Muslim guy raised in Canada, and he's now teaching in South Africa. So we talked about gay circuit parties in South Africa as a Muslim guy, and it was stuff like that is just fascinating to me because it brings me into other people's worlds and I get their perspectives. But yeah, I have very few that I wouldn't say were absolutely, I had a blast with. This week's one that is out is with Mika Sherrill, and she is a force of nature. She's a fine art sculptor and runs the It Cast. And holy smoke, that woman brings everything to her work. She's incredible.
That is awesome.
So tell us a little bit about your classes that you do. I know you do classes and things like that. And I know you were telling us last time that you're really into the 201, not just the 101. So what's that all about?
Okay, so if you ever go to a kink conference or look up classes online, you have to have the fundamentals. You have to know how to negotiate for consent. You have to know basic skills. You have to know some safety stuff. And there are really brilliant people who teach those. So I leave that type of stuff to the people I know who do it really well. And I'm always happy to refer, hey, take this person's class, take that person's class. I do what I call the more 201 and 301. And I focus a lot more on connection and mindfulness and the body. So I have an upcoming class. In fact, I'm repeating it in September, I believe, which is mindfulness and kink, which is integrating mindfulness techniques like breathing and meditation and mantras into your kink to kind of deepen that connection with a partner and yourself. I do a lot around disability in the body or chronic illness in the body, because we all age. A lot of us will develop some type of disability, even if it's as simple as diabetes or asthma. There's so many of us who live with those. So how do you play safely? How does that change how you play? How do you integrate it to make it feel less medical and less caregiver when you have somebody who has a serious disability? How do you negotiate with a partner who has a mental illness that at some points will make them unable to consent? Right? If you live with manic depression, if you're really depressed or really manic, you're not in a space where you can consent, and how to understand that. So I like doing those classes. I do quite a few classes around that type of stuff, and have a ton of fun. And then I also do some other ones that people don't always talk about. Like I have one coming up in October, which is how to introduce your partner to your kink. Because so many of us are terrified of going, hey, honey, would you be into this? And how do you have those conversations? What happens if you start dating a vanilla person, heaven forbid, you know?
I think a lot of people are curious about that. We hear a lot of questions like that, like, I'm into this. How do I talk to somebody about this? I think that is a huge topic for a lot of people.
It is a huge topic for a lot of people. And it's kind of funny because a lot of times there's people who've been in relationships a long time. Yeah. And say, this is the person you're supposed to trust the most and be the most comfortable with. But the fact is, it's the person you also fear the most because you're like, ooh, I don't want my best friend in the world to judge me, And so, but then you start talking about this and, you're both into it. And the other one's like, hey, I've been waiting. Yes, it's perfect.
Well, and we don't have those models in the way we teach about relationships and the way we teach sex ed. We don't do, well, this is how you talk about your desires. This is how you talk about your needs. And one of the reasons those things come up in a relationship you've been in 5, 10, 20 years is because most of us never really got in touch with our deeper desires. Like, sex ed, if you get it in this country, is like slot A goes into hole B, preferably put on a condom, otherwise you'll die. And that's about it. Even in college, we don't have classes like get in touch with your desire. What feels good to you? I know so many people in their 30s and 40s who've never spent a lot of time masturbating, and they actually can't tell you what they're looking for in a sex toy or what will make them come because they just haven't explored it.
That's very true. That's very true.
I was going to say that. I think that's really true.
There's a lot of things that I wish I would have, found sooner. Being married and kinky, we have a lot of, I'm lucky in a lot of ways because we get to just think of something. Sure, let's try that. Why not? It's just a Thursday, but.
Right. Well, and there's a freedom with that. When you have a partner, you can explore that because even kinky folks will get locked into okay, so everything is going to be beat, 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 slap, 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 call you a few names, stick on the nipple clamps, jerk you off, boom, and we're there. And you can only do that so many times before it gets boring. Yep. I mean, you can do it more times than you can do, kiss, 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 doggy style done. But, there's something to be said for, continuing to explore. And as you get older, your mental needs change, your physical needs change. So, at nearly 50, kneeling for an extended period of time is no longer an option without various support devices, right? So, you've got to explore that. So I know doms who, as they get older, it's like aftercare includes 2 Tylenol and an ice pack, right? Because it's workout. It's a workout.
That's okay. Hillary and we're going to send you a pair of FTK branded knee pants.
Perfect. I will sport them. I will wear them. I will throw them up on social media.
Oh my God, that was so funny when you said that to me.
Right, yeah, I was gonna say.
And I said to myself, that's a damn good idea.
Right, we need sexy knee pads. I'm thinking like red or, pretty colored spandex over the gel caps, branding.
Well, as we all wish we aged like fine wine, but the truth of the matter is we all aged like milk.
Thanks for bringing that up. All jokes aside, I'd say it's just truth. I mean, the other day I'm trying to do a little thing, and I try to throw my leg a certain way, and I swear to God, I heard my hip go cook, and I said, "Oh God!" And that was that. I mean, I had to sit down, and I finally said to myself, "Yeah, you're 40. It's not going to get any better from here."
Well, I went into my masseuse the other day and she always checks in, well, anything hurt and stuff. I said, yeah, I kind of threw my lower back out. She's like, what were you doing? I'm like, I tried to have sex before I stretched and had my Tylenol in the morning. She knows I know the exact injury because I've done it too because she's just over 50. And it's like, it's just insulting that like now I had to move from a breakfast, early morning sex person to like a brunch hour sex person because I need like my coffee and my Tylenol and shit before I can safely have sex anymore.
You gotta warm up and shit.
Gotta get ready.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I did. I'm like an old truck, man. I gotta get a couple miles on me before I start running good.
No, and it happens, but it doesn't mean it's the end of your kink, you can still do. I know people in their 70s and 80s still doing wild stuff, and you figure out how to accommodate.
Oh heck yeah. I'm gonna be that old dirty man. That's 100%. I'm gonna be like 100 years old, chasing her around with my little tennis ball thing, knowing I can't even do anything about it, but I'm gonna catch it.
So you recently did just have a comedy show. How did it go?
Wonderfully. We had a great audience, really engaged. Every comic knocked it out of the park. I now have my new favorite line, and one of the comics, a friend of mine, talks that he's bisexual, his partner's non-binary, so their biggest fear is to be mistaken as a boring old couple, hetero couple. So they make sure when they're having sex to say no homo or no hetero afterwards instead of no homo.
Oh shit. So I know that we're having a good time, but you said something to me last time that I want to have a conversation with, if you don't mind. You brought up this thing called the Earn It Act. Now, I was completely unaware of this when you brought it up. And of course, as soon as you hear it, you start Googling, you start getting into it, you're like, holy shit. This thing here is worse than Sesta Foster in a lot of ways. And it has zero chance of doing, and I don't even think it's whatever they say it's for, that's not what it's for. So you brought this up, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about, it's important that we get everybody to think, because I have, to be honest, I think about it, it's like, what do we do? I mean, how do you even fight that, right? Because I have no political background. You clearly have that background. I mean, this thing is bullshit. What do we do about this thing? So if you don't mind, kind of tell a little FTK what it is, if you don't mind.
So for people who don't know what it is, the Earn It Act is a bipartisan bill. It's moving its way through the Senate first, and then it'll go through the House. But what it proposes to do is to create rules that will allow government agencies to access, decrypt, read, and catalog all social media messages on sites with over 30,000 people. So this would include things like Free the Kink and FetLife, and ones that we're very familiar with and use all the time. The stated goal is to end childhood sexual abuse. But the way this is set up, they're basically setting up ways to troll your social media messages and catalog them, flag them. And for all of us who are in alternative sexuality communities, you know what it's like when people are like, oh, well, you must be grooming somebody because you're queer or you're into kink, so clearly you're into kids, right? Which to most of us is incredibly upsetting. Like the kink community, we understand consent and boundaries better than most people, but that's not the wider perception. And so they want to set up this committee to basically create all of these rules and structures for places like ICE and the FBI and the CIA to just cull through your social media messages and see if there's anything suspicious. And if you spend any time with government, they can make a lot of things suspicious. And as it stands, we're still fighting for basic rights, for bodily autonomy, for women, for people who are trans. They have their clear eyes set on getting rid of gay marriage, right? So it raises questions like, what happens if you're on a platform like TikTok or Instagram and you have a kid who's trans and they've just turned 18 or 19 and they're reaching out to you, or they may be just under and they're reaching out and saying, hey, I need help. I've seen your videos and stuff. Does that get flagged? Right? If they go after gay marriage, if they're looking, they've made some very clear indications with the last decision that kind of got rid of Roe in a lot of ways, that they may target sodomy laws. So if you're on FetLife setting up a gangbang and talking about anal sex, does that mean you get flagged? These get cataloged? Like, I talk about shit on FetLife I don't want government to know. I think most of us do.
Everywhere. I say it everywhere. We don't care. We are out there. I'm gonna say exactly what I want to say. I live in American history. This thing is scary as hell. I mean, when you told me about this thing, I totally was like, what the hell is this? And then you start getting into it. I read an interesting article on one of the websites that was talking about, what about the people who are out, going to like, rallies for trans rights or persons of color's rights and all this. And then what if they use that because the thing is will be run by the Attorney General, from what I understand. Right. That changes what happens to the next one, and that they perceive it as some kind of threat.
You're a terrorist.
Now all of a sudden they can just start watching you on any little thing. Next thing you know, you're locked up over something, or it's absolutely ridiculous. Or just normal conversations,
Right.
that you have no fucking business in,
Exactly. Well, and you can picture somebody like, it's one thing now with Merrick Garland as the Attorney General, but you get another John Ashcroft in there, it opens the door for so much bad stuff.
It's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And they were talking about, this thing basically could be one of the last key pieces to strip the last of our freedoms away, because you think about a platform over 30,000. Well, we are all on one, at least. There's very few people. There's what, 70% of the US population is on at least one social media platform. Well, you're going to be able to,
so many people use it.
And where can that go from there? Because you think about companies like Apple, who do have a reputation for protecting the data of their clients. When does that come into play? When did then text messages and emails, anything? Because I understand it's anything with any kind of end-to-end encryption. It doesn't even have to be a social platform, right?
No, doesn't necessarily have to be a social platform. And it would be then a lot of ways. How do you get around a warrant is one of the questions. Is this one of the ways? If you're just kind of out there fishing for these messages, then do you get to go through, and anything that looks kind of suspicious to the bots you have trolling, then does that justify a warrant? There's lots of major questions to this. And the way they have it set up, the people who are running it, and as somebody who worked on a political commission, I was the executive director of one, my board was mostly elected officials. What happens is the most powerful elected officials have and appointed officials have the loudest voice. So it would be the Attorney General, the head of the FBI, the head of ICE. They're going to drown out. They only require on a panel of 22 people to have any civil liberties experiences. They don't have to be a civil liberties attorney. They just have to have civil liberties experience to be the protection. But if you get some low-level attorney in the ACLU going up against this board of people, it's 1 out of 22. It's not like they're going to override it. And it's very concerning.
It is concerning.
Yeah. It's especially concerning because, what the government deems to be, acceptable and unacceptable is always a gray area, how they label people, and all of a sudden you're a terrorist or something like that. And how many people do express that their dislike for the government, to their friends, to their family, whoever, is that going to be an issue for them?
And you brought up the warrant part, which I was reading a lot of attorneys saying that if this becomes law, I'm a conspiracy theorist in a lot of ways. The one thing I don't trust in this world is government. And so, but I know that, if they obtain certain information without the right, when you get to a court, at least, through the poisonous tree, you have a better chance. But does this law make that pretty much like they just have carte blanche? They don't ever need a warrant. And when you get to court, you have no protections because it's the law of the land.
Well, and that's what's not clear in this, is where those will fall. And because this is initiated by protecting childhood sexual exploitation, what happens when they get on FetLife and discover what a little is, or a middle? How much of that gets flagged because we use the diminutives, and while in the kink context, it's understandable, a bot doesn't know the difference between a fetish site and, one that's pimping out, kitty porn.
Yeah. Right. And I'll give you an example of this real life. We were living in Colorado, and when we left Colorado, she had written me a note, and used the terms daddy and I'm happy to be your baby girl and other things. Like that, yeah. Some of those little things like that. And somehow that had dropped down behind a shelving unit in this house. And when we moved out, we just moved out. Well, the person in the house found it, freaked out, called the police. Yeah. We got calls from police. She had to do a handwriting thing so they could do hand samples to make sure that she wrote it and sent her. It was terrible. And I cannot tell you how much of oh my God, this is happening right now. At the time, it was the biggest deal in the world. Right. It was, many years ago in our relationship, and now I just tell them to go fuck themselves. But I've come a long way from there, and so it's that on steroids.
Yeah.
Well, and can you imagine them then coming across those messages, and you work in education, you work as a childhood speech therapist, right? And then they stumble across your little site and you go like all of a sudden you can destroy an entire career when there was no intent ever to aim this at children, but because it's unclear whether or not how they will figure out that and how many like okay, so there's a fair amount of people in government who are kinky. I will testify to them. Right? We're all over. But how many government officials in law enforcement could tell you what a little is, what real consent is? Because in the US, consent law is much less strict than the kink community holds itself to.
Correct. Yep.
So
Absolutely. So the $1 million question, what can the average person, Mac and Hillary, what can the average person do? What steps do we need to take to at least make sure all of our collective voices gets heard there before this thing just gets passed under our nose? Because let me tell you, I read the news every day, all of it. I don't just read one of it. I want all of it because I need to know what's going on in the world. So I'm one of those guys who like do the skimming. And I've never seen anything really about this until you brought it up. So I'm assuming a lot of folks have no idea this is even happening.
Yeah, it hasn't received very much coverage at all, which makes sense, right? With everything else going on in the world, this is going to get fewer click-throughs when they say, oh, new law to protect, to prevent sexual predation on children. Okay, cool, we'll let that go, with everything else we can put up there. So no, there's not a lot of coverage. The best thing you can do is let your electeds know where you stand. So this is a federal law. It has to make it through the House and the Senate. So you can go to house.gov or senate.gov, put in your zip code. It'll tell you who your representatives are. Write them. Say, I am opposed to this. I do believe in a level of privacy. I am completely against childhood exploitation, but this will do nothing for it. And if you want a guide for how to write the letter, I actually put one up on my love letters site. There's a post on the Earn It Act, and I'll walk you through how to argue to whatever elected official and have the language to send it to them and just say, hey, I'm against it. Because elected officials do keep track of how many yays, how many nays come in. And if they think it's going to make them look bad or hurt them in a re-election, it'll make them think twice about voting for it. If they do open it for a period of public comment, I'll be all out there screaming on my sites, hey, please go make public comment so this doesn't, go through. But yeah, at a minimum, just get those letters out or take a 5-minute call to your House or Senate representative. They'll log it in, be really polite, just say, hey, this is my name. They'll ask you for your address because they want to verify you're in the district. And then just say, I'm calling about the Earn It Act. I want to make sure it's on record that I strongly oppose the passage of this. Thank you very much. And that'll get ticked and tallied.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of timeline? Is there a deadline when this thing will probably get through? Do we have, are we against the clock here on this?
No, so we're going up. We're going into the August recess. So there's nothing really happening now. It'll come back. If it's going to get passed, it'll probably happen next spring. Okay. Just on the timetable. So watch for changes around February and March. You'll start seeing this move through, and it'll be taken care of by next June because then everybody will be into the election and they go back out on recess for that.
Oh, so we really are on the clock. I mean, we got to get it done.
Couple months, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's coming up this week or next, but yeah, definitely by next spring, this will be an issue.
Okay. Thank you for going over with me today. I know we like to have a lot of fun, but that's an important topic to get handled.
Especially for the kink community. If you want to frame the kink, it's going to be a lot harder if all your social media messages could be read by some government agency.
Right. If they're watching you, you're going to be a lot less prone to go and be able to talk about it and everything else. And in the community itself, we've had so many positive changes and there's so many things that we still are working on to change. And we're going to have a lot less progress if we're all like, no, I better not talk about that.
Oh, and I know we had a couple other questions, I think, but I did one more thing on that Earn It Act. Is there like a petition that's like on a national level that people could go and sign that would get in front or help get that in front of? That you know of?
Not yet, but not that I know of. But if anybody's going to do it, it'll be the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, which is ncsfreedom.org. Great organization. Sign up for their newsletters, sign up for their emails. They'll let you know as this progresses because they're kind of the bulwark when it comes to the legal stuff around this.
Yeah, they sure are. There's an amazing organization with an amazing team of people who do amazing work.
Yeah, and I mean, they always have a lot of nice resources and everything else that they offer right there on their site as well.
Yeah.
Well, listen, is there anything else you'd like to share with the Free the Kink community about yourself? Or, people want to find more about you. Where do they go?
Yeah.
So I'm Auntie Vice pretty much everywhere. My site's auntie.vice.com. There's the Fat Chicks on Top podcast. There is the love letters to a unicorn.com. So yeah, and Auntie Vice on most social media. My DMs are open. I'm happy to answer them. And it happened to be, we were re-recording. I launched my merch line. So I have unicorn sweaters. I've got little fat chicks on. Yes, I have underwear that says Fat Chicks on Top across the ass or across the So if you want to show your love for fat chicks, I've got Fat Chicks on Top t-shirts. Let the world know where you think they should be sitting.
And that's on the website?
That's on auntie.vice.com under shop. Yep. And I've got like little fat unicorns sitting on donuts and stuff for bras. And...
Oh my goodness, that's so cute.
Well, we definitely will make sure those links are in there because that is awesome.
Yeah,
we are huge fans of Fat Chicks on Top of the podcast.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of fun to listen to. If you haven't ever listened to it, you're really missing out.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed the last one. We were just listening to that today.
Oh, thank you. It's a ton of fun. I'm really glad you guys reached out and I was able to discover all the great stuff you offer. This is an exciting community and I'm glad I'm finally connected. And I believe we have a recording date to have you on my show. So we'll be able to hear more.
Yes, we're super excited.
I can't wait. Auntie Vice, thank you so very much. If you ever need anything from our community, you just reach out. We'll definitely get it out there for you, okay?
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend. Bye.